Sarah Hewson, tell us about what you can see here and the types of people that are coming in. As Peter quite obviously correctly says, that there's plenty of domestic figures that are walking through the doors right now, so it's going to literally be the who's who for the next hour or so.
This is a day that is bringing together kings and queens, PMs and presidents, emperors and emirs, alongside ordinary members of the public who have been invited because of their service to the country. People who were awarded honours during the Queen's birthday honours earlier this year for their contribution during the COVID pandemic, for example. It is a gathering the like of which we have never seen before and the like of which we will never see again, indicative, Paul, of the magnitude of the Queen's influence. But it will also be a family day, and that indicated by the fact that we have the inclusion today of Prince George and Princess Charlotte, two of the Queen's great-grandchildren, taking part in the procession through the Abbey alongside the rest of the royal family.
We'll of course cross to UK Sky Live for their coverage around the top of the hour, and they'll take us through obviously all the arrivals and the wonderful detail in the service. But Nigel, we spoke to a reverend before about what's in the service today, but overwhelmingly it's a commemorative service of Christian faith, and there's no apologies there.
No, and you know, every one of her Queen's messages, you know, Christmas Day, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, family stopped and put the telly on, and she talked about Jesus, she talked about her deep Christianity. And it was interesting, at a time when we were becoming less of a church-going country, she started to push that message even harder. Yes, this was an absolutely huge part of who Her Majesty the Queen was. So yes, it'll be a very religious service. And of course, remember, you know, King Charles is defender of the faith. He is that
faith. There was a debate. It would be.
Well, he said that when the coronation comes, he will maintain the old coronation vows of defender of the faith. But of course, as we've always done in this country, we're welcoming of all other faiths too. And he's put that marker down. And I have to say, I've been pretty critical in the past of many of Charles's campaigns. Thus far, he's doing a terrific job. And of course, we think he'll be in Australia fairly soon.
Now, I've asked this of a couple of people. Obviously, we're saying goodbye to a certain era. Do you see in their actions and what you've been picking up in your shows, your social media, a recommitment to what has made this country what it is?
The most extraordinary thing I've seen is on social media, with what I've been saying over the course of the last couple of weeks, on some social media platforms I'm not necessarily a fan of, but I've literally, when I've been putting out messages about why this matters, about why history come alive is what our country is, I've never had more video views in my life. Something like 20 million views I've had, all aimed, and you can guess the name of the platform, the one all the teenagers and young people go to. This has got young people talking. You see, they're being taught at school to hate the country, to hate our history, to hate everything about us. They're taught that actually the royal family is the symbol of a colonial era. Do you know what? They see all of this, they're not buying it. So I'm actually rather encouraged by that. I'd worried, you know, the day she died, would those values, those magnificent values of duty, honour, service, patriotism and Christianity, would they die with her? Actually, what I've seen in the last 10 days, I'm quite optimistic.
Sarah Hewson, I'd like to go to you. I mean, you've been at many royal events, in and amongst crowds. What's the mood like at the Abbey?
Well, I think the mood today is very sombre. It is solemn because today is the moment that we mark the Queen's passing, and it is a day that will define the end of the Elizabethan era. But she was 96. It was a life lived to the full, and it was a life well lived, as her own son, King Charles, said. And so I think we will also see an atmosphere of celebration of that life amongst the sorrow. But it is remarkable, the scenes we've seen here in London over the past 10 days, isn't it, Peter? That queue that became a cultural phenomenon, people weeping as they bowed their heads in Westminster Hall to see the coffin. Many people completely surprised by the way in which they've reacted to this, because I think not just is this the death of a monarch, but it is also the passing of a generation and that change, that end of an era. and that will take some coming to terms with. And that is why we've also had this long process, 10 days of public mourning here, 10 days of ceremony in order to prepare people for this moment, and then the beginning of the reign of the new king.
Sarah, I know we spoke about it off air, but were you surprised that William's kids are going to be as prominent as they are going to be today?
Look, this decision, Paul, has been taken after really careful consideration by the Prince and Princess of Wales, who wanted their children to be a part of what is a moment in history for all of us as a nation, but also for them as a family. They played a really prominent role during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. They have been prepared for this, but perhaps nothing preparing them for a day on this scale. But we're told by Australia's Governor-General David Hurley that Prince George, who's aged 9, does have an understanding of what is going on. He is now beginning to realise from the tributes, from the response to the death of his great-grandmother, Gangan as they called her, just how important a figure she was. Little Louis, who's just 4, won't be attending today, but he's had many questions, including, can we still play the same games when we go to Balmoral? Now Gangan isn't there anymore. But for George and Charlotte today, taking part in that procession, not the full walking procession, but the procession from the door of Westminster Abbey through the Abbey to take their seats alongside their parents, will be very, very significant indeed, and also sends a very powerful message about the next generation and the future of the royal family.
Well, we'll end on an Australian note with you, Nigel, because confirmation is coming through that the Prince and Princess of Wales and all 3 children will do a royal visit to Australia. We were using former High Commissioners here. We don't think we've ever had a royal family visit of this nature. We're going to see a lot of diplomacy, not just from Charles and Camilla, but also from the Walesers, aren't we?
Whatever future, whatever constitutional future Australia decides to take, and that's up to you, although I would just say that all of this going on is rather better than a dreary republic with some cracked-out politician in charge, but that's your choice. But I think what this message sends is that the royal family are there to be part of this debate, and actually, you know what? Whatever future Australia chooses, it's very important to us. This connection between our 2 countries, it matters. I would suggest it matters for both of us. And the big signal is that's going to continue.
Yeah, Nigel and Sarah, thank you very much. We'll see you in the Man Cave and in Australia in a couple of weeks' time.